Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm going to speak from here. I'm not very well in this kind of stand-ups. What a presentation. Very interesting to hear the president of Microsoft, his thoughts about privacy problems, the future. I was invited to provide with some comments, and I have a few minutes, which for sure will not be enough to put together all of the things that I have in my mind right now after hearing Brad. Let me start saying that when Brad explained his view of the evolution of technology, and he started with computer power, then he said something about the cloud, digital age, and artificial intelligence, it immediately came to my mind an article that I read today in the New York Times, and also a question that was asked in a very interesting and beautiful dinner that I attended last night, when the attendants were asked what we think about privacy in 10 years, in only 3 words. And at that time I said very clearly, new technology challenges. And today when I read in the New York Times, and I quote, Google claims computing breakthrough, the company said that it had achieved quantum supremacy, a milestone that would make current supercomputers look like toys. Scientists likened the announcement to the Wright brothers' first flight in 1903, prove that something is possible even though it may be years before it can fulfill its potential. So think about that. Think about, technology change and how we are going to deal with this kind of technology change. If this is true, if today's computers will be like toys in the future, for sure we will need something to do very seriously to protect privacy. Brad also put a video with a story of a person that was under surveillance by Stasi. Very interesting and important story. But then immediately came again up to my mind something that I saw a few blocks from here when I visited the Bunkers Art Museum. I recommend to all of us to visit it, and it has at least 3 rooms dedicated to state surveillance. And you will see there all the technological devices that were used for state surveillance. Small mics, small photo cameras, hidden mics. So I'm telling you this because when I was visiting that museum, immediately I thought, well, this is something that always happens. State surveillance using technology devices. So it's some sort of linkage between the willing of the state to intrude our privacy using technology. We can say that something similar could happen today, but it's not only the state that can have information about us. Today, because of the scale, because of the nature of technology, it is possible that not only, I repeat, the state have that kind of information about us. So, what to do? And I took note of some of Brad Smith's phrases. He said that we need, under these technological changes, retain values even in a technological change. And the explanation is for me and for us and for him that privacy is a fundamental right. It's a fundamental human right. That's a very nice sentence. We repeat and repeat and repeat that sentence every time that we talk about privacy. But I think that the core question is how we are going to put in practice that idea, that we need to protect privacy because it is a fundamental human right. Since I am here to comment and to discuss Brad Smith's keynote speech, wonderful speech. It's interesting because he mentioned the 3 ways for the protection of privacy. And I'm not going to tell you again what he said, but I was, and I will finish with this, I was very interested in what he said about the 3rd wave. The 3rd wave that for him is today under conversation. But even it is under conversation, he gave us some of his ideas. And there are 3 ideas in the views of Brad Smith. One is that to cope with the problems of the new technologies that can affect privacy, we need new laws and regulations. This is something that we have been discussing in this conference for many years. We need new laws, we need new regulations, we need better laws, we need better regulations. But sometimes it's difficult to get these new laws passed by our Congress, by our regulators, and more fundamental for me is what kind of laws we are talking about. Laws that are going to protect e-commerce, laws that are going to protect the citizens, laws that are going to give guidelines only to the business sector. So we need a discussion on that. For sure, for protection of privacy, we need laws to protect privacy, but what that means concretely. And I cannot find very good answers, not because Brad didn't give the answers, but because I think it's a complicated issue. The second point for Brad Smith is that we will need a new global privacy pact. That is close related to what he said and with some of our discussions here about the GDPR and the GDPR evolution around all over the world. But again, I like the idea to have uniformity in rules around the world that for sure will benefit the people. If I know how privacy is protected in my country and I know that it's protected in the same way in another country, for sure I will feel more protected. But how we are going to reach to that point? It is very common to talk about core values. It is very common to talk about, core fundamental human rights. But the history shows us that it's very difficult at the international arena to get agreements on that aspect as well. I think that we need to try, but it's not an easy task. And the third thing, or the third answer that Brad put on the table today is what I think is really, really interesting to hear from him. He said that we need more initiative from the private sector, more initiative from the companies that are dealing with digital data, more tools provided by the private sector, by the business sector, by the companies. And that should be more than welcome for us. Hearing someone who is coming from a company like Microsoft saying, okay, we need more initiative coming from us to protect privacy, of course it's a good news. But I would say that, and I'm not now speaking about any specific company, I would say that at the same time that I like the idea, and I endorse the idea that we need more self-regulation initiative coming from the private sector, what we need right now is examples of all of that. We need examples of the protection of privacy coming from the private sector. We need more privacy impact assessments, for example, more transparency in the privacy impact assessment. So we need examples, not just saying that what we will need are more initiatives. So if we have examples coming from the private sector, maybe that examples could help us to develop regulations that could be better for the people and that will protect privacy in the next decade. Thank you very much.